Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Megan Glova, and today we're talking sharks. Now, the UNC Institute of Marine Sciences has been tracking sharks for decades. And because every day in news is different, WRAL Investigates producer Randall Kerr joined the team for this adventure. Randall, how was it?
Oh, it was really cool.
So why did you guys go out there in the first place? Was it to see shark tracking in action? Was it to learn more about the species, or a mix of both?
I think, especially this past summer, it seems like around the world we had a lot of reports of shark bites, and people always love shark stories in general, just like stories on dogs and cute kittens. I mean, people like that. People like our investigative stories too. But we were just looking for something that was really good, teasable content, and we said, well, how about sharks? And we knew that the UNC Institute had done a lot of work over the years, and so I reached out to them, and they just happened to be doing like bi-weekly expeditions for this summer. They go out usually early spring until about October or so, depending on the weather. And we were initially supposed to go 2 weeks prior, but Tropical Storm Debbie canceled that trip quickly because the seas were too rough. So we had a 2-week delay, and woke up at 3 in the morning. I felt like Jeff Hogan, and hopped in the car and drove and met my photographer, and the two of us drove down to Morehead City where we left.
All right. And what is UNC's goal when they go out there?
Their bigger goal is the safety and the health of our ecosystem. Okay, so if there are big sharks eat small sharks eat the fish that we like to eat.
Right.
And catch, whether it's recreational or even sport. And for decades, there was a huge decline of big sharks off of our coast. And when I'm saying off our coast, we were out about 2.5 miles, and then we were out a little further, about 5 to 6 miles between like Atlantic Beach and Cape Lookout. So it's not like we were, surf fishing. We were out there, but they just like to document what's out there. And after decades of a declining large shark population, they say they're starting to see a slight uptick, which may scare people, but it also means that the coast is actually getting healthier as far as the fish population and everything else.
Okay. And after that 3 a.m. wake-up call, what did the day look like on your end and then on their end as well?
Yeah, so we hopped down there. We got to Morehead City. Port call was 6:30 in the morning, so we got there, waited for some of the researchers to show up, hopped on a boat, and pushed off just as the sun was coming up, so it was not a bad way to start the day, even though it was early. It was really pretty. We went out. We were still in the Sound, and we caught a bunch of bait fish. We trolled for about 20 minutes and caught a bunch of bait fish, and then figured out once they pulled the net in, figured out what they needed, pushed everything belts back in, and as we sped out to our first location, we went further first. They baited all the hooks and just had them sitting there, and once we got out there, they just put them out with buoys, and it was a 100-yard line that they laid out as we kind of slowly drifted away from them, and they wait an hour. And an hour later, they go back to the first one, and that's where they start pulling up the hooks. I think they said there were 10 buoys, and there were 10 hooks between each buoy, so they just start reeling it in and see what we get.
Wow. Did you get a chance to get hands-on
at
all in this process?
Yeah.
Great.
The photographer, no chance. He wasn't getting near that.
He's a little busy.
He was like, I'll stick to that. But yeah, I was using the GoPro camera, and he had his regular gear. But yeah, once we, after the first round, we caught 7 at the further distance, and they were all in the 3 to 4 foot range, and they were all just sharp-nosed sharks. But they were full-grown for their size. They weren't going to get any bigger. But they have seen that population has grown, and the worrisome thing that they're seeing with that is it's called degradation. So people go out fishing, and as they're reeling their fish in, whether it's mackerel or tuna or whatever, that these sharks are eating what people are catching as they're being reeled in. And it's called degradation. So that's the impact it has on, recreational fishermen or fishermen who are out there for doing it for a business.
Yeah.
So we caught 7, and then we went in a little further, like I mentioned, about 2.5 miles offshore, and did, same protocol, waited an hour, and we got 17 that time.
Oh, wow.
So it was so there were more closer, which again, not meant to scare people. And they were all this. We caught, it was 16 of the sharp nose and one black sharp nose, which is looks the same except the nose has got a little black spot on it, and at least this one appeared to be a little feistier than the other ones we had.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so they bring the sharks on the boat. They have a little trough that has water running through it to make sure that they're getting, the water and the oxygen they need. Quick measurements, gender check. They, make sure it looks healthy, and they tag some of them depending on the size, or the rarity, or how few they see, and they toss them back in. Sharks fascinate me more than scare me.
Right.
I've set up shoots with Gerald Owens. Our Gerald Owens has gone out with the O-Search tracking group that does the great white tracking up and down the East Coast.
Oh,
and
cool.
They actually had 2 expeditions off Morehead City. And I set that up hoping that they were also going to let me go, but only Gerald went. And
had to try.
fortunately for me, not for him, they didn't catch any great whites, because that would be the coolest thing ever, is to see that. I was probably one of the few kids, I was probably 6 or 7, to date myself again, that I actually saw Jaws on Christmas Day. So that's, and ever since then I've been fascinated, and I still love the ocean, love going in, don't worry about it. I mean, they told us when we were out there, anytime you're in the ocetion, there's at least one shark within 100 yards of you.
Oh yeah.
All the time. You just,
right.
It's a thing. I mean, if you're afraid of them, definitely afraid of them, then just don't go in the water.
Uh-huh.
But
they live there.
Snakes bite too, and you don't not go outside because they're snakes. So
exactly. What was the biggest one they caught the day you were there?
It was about 4.5 feet. I
Okay.
mean, so they weren't huge. 4.5 feet, probably weighed about 15, 20 pounds. So small on the scale of what we can see off of our coast. But like I said, it's more. It was just a fishing expedition to see what's out there and how that's changing over time, and that way they can see how everything's working. I mean, I had too long of a discussion about that, about the impacts of that and things they've seen in other, even other parts of the world where a lot of shark finning was happening, and that's why. And then after Jaws, there wasn't a lot of compassion for big sharks either. So people would catch them and then just bring them in and not let them go, thinking they were doing the Earth a favor, and they were actually doing the opposite. But in other parts of the world, big sharks were getting eliminated. Tiger sharks were getting eliminated. Tiger sharks eat anything, including sea turtles. And so they've had parts of the world in like the South Pacific where all the tiger sharks are gone, so the turtle population has exploded. The turtles have eaten all the seagrass, so now fish are dying because there's no oxygen. I mean, so
chain reaction.
Everything works together, and that's really what the goal of this whole project is. So it was really cool to feel like you were part of it, just because I got to touch a shark. So now I feel like I'm a scientist.
That made the trip in itself.
Yeah, of course.
Summer is the obvious time to go and do this research.
Yep.
Do they continue it throughout the rest of the year? What will the rest of 2024 look like for them?
I believe when we got off the boat, she said they normally will do trips until early to mid-October maybe. Mm-hmm. And it depends. I mean, if it's a real active hurricane season where they miss a lot of weekends, they may try to push it out. But it can get pretty cold on the water, in early November, especially when you're out that far and the wind's blowing.
Oh, yeah.
And that water's pretty chilly. So, I mean, they try to keep it to early spring to probably early fall is the window where they do these expeditions.
Did you have a favorite part of it all?
Yeah, just every time that I've been fishing on the coast, you're always like, oh, we're never going to catch anything. And just, even when we caught the first 7, I was excited. But then when we caught 17, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool.
That's a lot for one day.
I was thinking 2 dozen was well above what I was expecting to catch. So that was kind of the highlight, just to see that many. How many are caught, and then the care they take to make sure they get every bit of information they need off the shark before putting it back in. So it was cool to see the whole process and work, and then obviously knowing about what their bigger goal is, just to see that for a day and know that this has been going on for decades and decades and decades was really awesome.
Sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was.
All right, Randall, thanks so much. And thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. It's a daily email that's waiting in your inbox every morning with local news, events, and headlines to get you ready for the day. Sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.